Well, the extreme housing deficit situation in the country has become a concern for many real estate agencies, but more so for many critics of government and government itself about how to improve the gap or the deficits in itself. How do we also ensure that if somebody wants to make purchases, that is of real estate, housing, etc., the mortgaging or the financing is right? And once we have fluctuating income levels coupled with trends of inflation that are not consistent, how does it all reflect on the industry? We have here with us the Executive Director or Secretary of the Ghana Real Estate Development Association, and Samuel Amagaibo is here. Thanks for joining me, Mr. Amagaibo.
Thank you.
Okay, but how serious is the situation? Have we bridged the gap from the last time we spoke, the last year?
The truth of the matter is we've actually widened it because we haven't done enough to confront what brought the 1.7 million already. And we had some demands per year. If you followed the statistics, the 1.7 million was estimated as of 2010. And between then and now, we haven't done much to supply the needs per year, meaning that we have increased the deficits from the 1.7 million to probably over 2 million.
Now, consistently, you say that is because the income levels are not right, the economy also is not performing as it should. Are those good attributable factors or variables for which we may have widened the deficit?
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, most of our houses are being sold through mortgages. And if your income level doesn't match to a certain amount, you will certainly not qualify for the mortgage. It is getting worse because our exchange rates is getting so bad, the inflation is catching up on us. So a house that probably we're selling just 2014, we're selling for 100,000 US dollars, was the equivalent of 220,000 Ghana cedis. That same house has not increased in terms of the dollar index. It is being sold today the same for $100,000. But do the exchange rates and see where it goes. It is hovering over 400,000. And aside that, government has also slapped a 5% flat rate tax on whatever sales you do. So apart from the inflation, which is making the cost of the house go to 400,000, it is now plus 5%, which is 20,000. So it goes to about 420,000. The same house that you were supposed to be buying for in 2014. So you can see the trend of the inflation rate. It's a killer.
And we know that for every industry, the pricing strategy has to be gotten right.
Yes.
And I believe that once the tax components come in, it means that that has to be factored into the pricing. But for many countries, it is a logical thing to do. You would want to stay in an abode which is well located in a very good community. And we know that very much a feature of the real estate housing sector is the paved road, the good utilities, etc. But then that becomes very much difficult for the ordinary man or the average Ghanaian worker who is hitting middle class to buy. At what point do we have to take a look at proper financing for the sector?
You've hit the nail right on the head. And as you rally around your analysis, you realize that cost is very important. Now, the reason why most of our houses are expensive is lack of support. Lack of support in the sense that ideally, every taxpayer must be properly catered for by the state. When I say that, I mean you should be given a community that has good access roads, good electricity supply, and good water supply. Government is unable to do that now. So that burden has been shifted from the government to the private sector. And so if you are into real estate business, it tells you that apart from finding the money to actually build the house and sell at that price, you are being burdened by the extra cost of providing this utility services and general infrastructure service on your land.
Well, tell me, which one becomes more of a government role? Government has laid out the grid. And so if you want some level of interconnectivity onto the grid, you have to sort it out yourself. I mean, to me, it's logic.
That is not how it works. Communities are built by government. It's not built by the individual. It is just because for business purposes, people have taken it upon themselves to take certain burden that should have ideally been government. But for business purposes, we have decided to take it upon ourselves. But if I take it upon myself, there's I could have sold my house for 100,000 if government has lived up to his responsibility. But because government is unable to do it, I, the private sector, have taken it up. But then it goes with costs. And so you'll be complaining that the houses from real estate developers are expensive.
Indeed, they are expensive.
Yeah, but it's not because they want to sell it expensive. It is because the cost to them is expensive.
Well, someone will say it's convenient for the real estate firms to be saying all that. But let's look at this. In other countries, in other countries, you take a look at the housing industry. There's some pool of funds or some funding available in which the sector pools its resources from. Why is it that in our parts of the world, in the sub-region, on the continent, and especially in our country, that doesn't seem to be the case?
First of all, that it's lack of drive. You know, some of these things have to be initiated.
If you say lack of drive, it means lack of commitment
from policymakers. Because this is a very simple thing that can be done. And we have sat down for too long. We haven't taken opportunity to do this, and now it is creating a problem for us. It is just about setting up a fund. Look at the ED fund has been set up to assist agricultural sector. Why haven't we done anything to help the real estate sector? It is only when the housing policy was launched last year that we saw it in that document that government has captured it that they intend to set up a fund. But when are we actually going to set up a fund? Today, the real estate developer is borrowing money from the bank at 32% minimum. How do you expect me to go and borrow 100,000 Ghana cedis to build a house for you, and the interest rate alone is 32? It tells you that the house is already...
And you are going to pay over the long term.
Yes, and that is on assumption that the house is completed within a year. But if it goes beyond a year, let's even use a year as a basis. It means that if I borrowed 100,000 to build a house for you, interest rate alone is 32,000. So the house is going to be 32,000. That is just one aspect of it. Other issues about the infrastructure cost, which we are taking ourselves as developers. If you add that cost to it, from our analysis, the infrastructure and land cost alone is about 30 to 35% of the cost of a house that you buy. So if government has lived up to its responsibility and has absorbed that 30% cost, I believe that it will help us to bring the cost of houses down.
Then if you say private sector, you want to undertake these initiatives alone because it's capitalism, it's entrepreneurship, and it's business. Why don't you then have a certain collaboration or perhaps increase negotiations or discussions with the financial institutions to have some pool of funding?
We have done that. Don't forget that the financial institutions themselves are also business people. And so they are looking for you to slap their interest rate on you and all that. But the collaboration, rather, that I think it is going to help us bring this housing deficit down, it is between government and the private sector. I believe that the government has a hold on what constitutes our prices. And if they are able to help us make certain arrangements in place, we'll be able to bring the houses down. Now, the issue of land, for example, are you aware that we are buying land more than 3 times sometimes? You buy a land today, the next day you are about to start your project. Kwesiata comes and says,
I know that happens to those of who have real estate houses. We just bought ordinary land. That makes a lot of sense to us.
No.
Even for the real estate
we are West. We are the West
firms?
corporate. We are the West because we acquire land on large scale, and the problems are as large as
you acquire in large acreages.
In large acreages, yeah. So the larger the land, the larger the problem. You see, so it is not like we are exonerated from the problem. The problem exists. So if you are buying land today and you are paying more than 3 people to finally own it, that is already a non-starter. It tells you that your price is already escalating. Okay.
But why do you have to put the price on the consumer? It means that you, whoever or whichever firm that negotiated for the land, you didn't do your homework right.
It is easier to say that, but the realities on the ground goes beyond that, because the system in place is not correct. We need to fix it. You know, government realized that we have issue on land. They set up a lab, land administration project. Lab 1, Lab 2, I don't know whether we are in Lab 3 already. I am not too sure what progress we have made, but we are still grappling with the same bureaucracies and long processing when it comes to land. And that has to be fixed. It's not been very defined. we are still having problem. Even in old established communities like Airport Residential Area, Cantonment, Laboni, Kanda Estate.
People are still coming for their lands.
People are still fighting ownership. And if we cannot solve ownership at that level, then we really have a problem. And in real estate, land is the primary thing that you need before anything else.
And so we're discussing housing. And for many of us, the stated word is shelter. And it is perhaps one of the foremost basic human needs, if not the most important. However, in the sprawling metropolis of Accra and its outskirts, finding a roof over one's head could be a headache or a daunting task that comes at a very high expense. Ordinary people can barely afford a roof over their heads due to soaring rent charges in Accra. And so this is what we did. My colleague Felix Akoyam decided to put a certain spotlight on the difficulties many Ghanaians were going through in finding shelter, which also may not be that decent after all.
Housing is one of Ghana's biggest development. Ghana's housing deficit stands at 1.7 million, according to the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association. More than 15,000 housing units must be built each year for the next 10 years to deal with the problem. But with no strict policy to regulate the sector, the housing challenge continues to worsen, especially for low-income earning urban dwellers. In some parts of Accra, almost unimaginable affluence can be found side by side with nearly unthinkable poverty, a clear evidence of a gaping chasm between the rich and poor. This grim reality appears not to have eluded the two major political parties in Ghana, the NDC and the MPP. Hence, the two parties in the last 2 decades have come up with varied proposals in their manifestos in a bid to solve the country's accommodation deficit. For instance, the opposition MPP in their 2012 manifesto to build affordable housing units for rent across the country in partnership with GREDA. The housing agency will support the provision of affordable housing for Ghanaians eager to buy their own homes. Non-profit community-based housing development will be encouraged based on successful models in other countries. The governing NDC, on the other hand, promised to promote brick and tile manufacturing using the opportunity offered by the availability of natural gas offshore Ghana. Support the use of pozzolana cement in the construction of both public and private housing units. Set up standards for engineering infrastructure covering road designs, electricity, water, telephones, and fire hydrants to suit all communities and income groups. However, for some Ghanaians, both governments have done very little if you consider what they promised on paper. Nothing, perhaps, really depicts the country's housing problem more graphically than finding teenagers sleeping on the streets. But even more chilling is what I found in this slum, Sodom and Gomorrah, otherwise known as Old Fadama, the city's largest slum. Most people living here are migrants from the north who have come to Accra in search of better prospects, but only a few of them live the better life they seek. From dirty streets, choked gutters, and flimsy structures, poverty is all too obvious here. I have come to meet 17-year-old Nihad. Nihad is a senior high school graduate from Yendi in the northern region. She is here to find money to further her education. She has been living and working as a head porter for almost a year. Back in Yendi, Nihad was sharing a room with 2 people, her mom and sister. But here at Fadama, the number of people she shares a room with has increased significantly. It's akin to prison conditions. There is no mattress in this room. They sleep on racks and mats. More than 12 people live in this room. Oh, okay, that's how you sleep.
Felix Akoyam there. But also gets to see that it's not all the nice houses alone that are in Accra. But so it means that you always concerned about the nice houses.
No, we are concerned for housing for all Ghanaians.
Okay.
Except that the current trend does not favor the private sector to help the underprivileged people, especially social housing and the affordable housing. It's a difficulty.
Why?
No private sector can drive that sector. We need to work with government to do it. You see, when I say social housing...
It needs to be a public-private partnership.
You see, when we say social housing, unfortunately, the world is such that we are not of the same class. We have the upper class, the middle class, lower, and super lower. The private sector is doing very well with the middle and the upper. But we are not doing well with the lower and the, yeah.
And you're saying because of the cost you can't?
Yes, the cost is a problem. So that is why we need government intervention. When we say social housing, we have a population.
Give me an example in Ghana, if we have a social housing.
We don't have any social housing scheme
Sakumo,
at all. No, those are not social housing.
The one that the government is building now?
No. Well, they call it affordable housing, but I believe you can spend some time going in.
I can't afford those houses.
Yeah, you can find out from them what their prices are. That is why I tell you that the system is bad. We need to work at it to bring it down. Social housing is for those that, for some reason, can never afford to either own or rent a house. The low-income people have the capacity to buy low-income housing and also rent good houses. And then the middle and upper, you know, I mean, we have all the luxury projects going up around town. Even that one, we are having a collapse because I believe that the private sector has served that population already. And I'm not too sure whether we have enough room to continue to produce those kind of
Why
houses.
not? It can be used
so
for investment purposes.
we need to shift our attention from the upper and the high and look at the medium and low income housing. But that's where the deficit is.
Those are the thoughts that go through your mind at the Ghana Real Estate Development Association.
Now, if you look at some of our designs now, we have shifted from the 3-4 bedroom and the plush house now. We are coming very down, and now we are developing some houses called expandable. We are not sure of your market, your pocket now. So we do designs where you can move into a chamber and hall, or just a 2-bedroom house, and as your family grows or you think you grow in size, then you can add on. Yeah.
You can add on any other plan you want.
No. It's controlled. It's controlled development. If we don't do that, I mean, we'll develop slums.
You have skirt and blouse in a community.
Yes.
But that brings me to the subject I also want us to look at before we wrap up. Those splash houses that keep coming up. We keep saying that deficits, etc., but we have $600,000 houses around in Accra.
Yeah, you know, like I said, whatever the situation is, every human environment, we have the upper class, and there's a market for it. It's not that the estate developers have deliberately decided to serve. And like I told you, it's clutton, meaning that we are almost finishing serving them. And so we need to begin to look at the low income and the middle now. That is where the deficit is. The 1.7 to 2 million housing deficit we are talking about has nothing to do in terms of percentage to the high rise and the luxury projects that are going on. Those things just take about 2% perhaps out of the
You go to
the
countries,
situation.
okay, let's even say Africa. Northern Africa, for example, you go to Tunisia, and I've been to some of those countries, Algeria, Egypt. They live in some of those high-rise buildings, but they are ordinary Egyptians.
I'm not too sure about that.
Well, their income levels,
upper class
their income levels may be different.
Yes.
But they are ordinary Egyptians who live in such high-rise social housing
They are
projects.
private business people who can afford those houses.
In Ghana?
Yes. And that is it. Most of them, those high-rise properties you see, are owned by Ghanaians.
Yes.
But they have bought them not for themselves. Most of them, they don't live inside themselves. They have only bought them as investment because they look at our inflation, they are putting their money in the bank. It's not the best. So if you put your money into property, Ghana, fortunately for us, our properties appreciate. We don't have any depreciating effect on our houses. And so they have just seen this as an opportunity, a business opportunity. And so they invest in it. It's very expensive, but the returns are good. That's why they're going for it. Because most of our foreign partners and people who come into this country to do business, they have the financial ability to rent or live in those houses. So they've taken a business opportunity, buy them at very expensive prices, but then rent them quite well, and then they are able to get returns for their investment. But it is not, that is not helping us with the deficit that we are talking about.
Because I want to ask you, how then do we serve the deficits?
First of all, I believe that the collaboration that we have been talking about is the most effective.
The PPP collaboration?
Yes, it's very necessary. Let us look at the price structure. What item on the price can government do something about it? Then we begin to take them out and leave the rest for the private sector.
Give me an example. What you're speaking is finance.
An ideal housing development arrangement would have been to get the land, first of all, from all so that if you have bought the land for 2,000 to 5,000, you can put that as your component.
There's a picture there. My director will put that picture on the line. Continue talking on the screen.
Okay.
So let's see a picture like this.
Yes, that's the ideal situation.
So
then you get the land.
Let's say we go and buy the land at Gomwa.
Yes, you buy the land, you put in the infrastructure, meaning send the road from any major trunk road onto that site, put in all the road networks.
And you said government can do that one?
Yes, that could be done by
government. So that cost is not
that cost is not, the price? Given to the
utilities?
Private. With utilities. The utilities, we are only asking you bring the water, bring the electricity. Then the developer will be saddled with only finding money to do the actual construction of the house. If he puts up the house there,
that still can make the house affordable in Ghana.
It will significantly.
For those people within the 2 million bracket?
Yes, let me tell you something. We have about 2 or 3 of our developers that are doing two-bedroom houses for $30,000 equivalent.
Are you sure?
I'm telling you.
In Ghana here?
Yes. I don't want to mention it will be campaign.
If you want after that, give me, I'll buy some.
Okay, I'll do that.
Mortgage.
Now, they are doing houses less than 30,000.
In Ghana here?
In Ghana here, $29,000 to $30,000, which equivalent will be about 108,000 Ghana cedis. If these people, these developers are doing this project all by themselves and are able to do it at this price, what will happen if you think government goes to support them? The 30,000 will reduce to about 20. This is what I'm talking about. Government must identify these developers, find out what their problems are, how they have been able to do these prices, and further assist them to bring that 30,000 houses down.
Can I even add a certain input? So the picture again, Fred. Okay, so we have the roads that have been taken care of by government.
Yes.
Utilities.
Yes.
Then even maybe taxes on the raw material for doing the roof.
Yeah.
Can also be subsidized, or let's say removed?
Yeah, let's say general importation. Now, at the moment, we realized about 70% on imports for houses.
Yes.
If we can do something about the import duties. You see, this is supposed to be directed at affordable housing. We are not saying that government should remove taxes from importing materials. But this is
so, for example, the president has gone to Japan. He's going to negotiate with companies there. And so the real estate agency would have to do the import at some rates.
At some rates. Now bring them in at maybe no import duties. And this is directed at solving a problem. We are not saying that.
How come none of you become the Minister of Housing or something of the sort? I think you could have influenced something.
That is something I cannot answer.
Well, true. It's just it's just something I just brought in though.
Yeah.
And we can't just finish discussing the subject
of
housing.
You don't need,
because all of us, I didn't grow up in a very good house, so I know that having a very good house is good.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily even need us to be ministers before we can solve the problem, because we are there to talk. If you open up yourself to ideas and consultation, we'll be able to assist you. And you must have that political will and commitment to want to help. If you have it, you will be able to do it.
When I go to the village, I notice that we use, is it mud?
Mud, yes.
What do we call it?
Yes, it's a...
laterite?
Yes, laterite. Or compressed bricks, yeah.
How come we can't do something like that, bake it well and use it for an affordable housing?
Yeah, there are some technical issues when it comes to that. First of all, it is cheaper, all right, but it has to be available within that locality. You know our issue with transportation costs. If I go to, the Cape Coast have a very large clay deposit. So if I want to do such a project, the ideal thing will probably to look at Cape Coast and want to do
every
that
Ghana
there.
has got mad house. Are you saying they don't have?
No, I'm saying that these things are located at certain strategic
every town
places.
in Ghana has got mad house.
Yeah, but sometimes when you look at the cost of transporting those products, the clay, to your side, like Accra, then you realize that transportation costs will come and eat up there.
Samuel Amagaibo is Executive Secretary for the Ghana Real Estate Development Association. We'll be discussing a subject of the growing housing deficit. The association has estimated that from the 1.7 million estimated deficit in 2010, now the figure has shot up to the roof, over 2 million they are estimating. It means that averagely, if you take our population, that number of houses are needed, but it means that a lot more people don't have places to sleep or good places to sleep in. That's a concern, or should be a concern for all of us. We're taking a break. When we come back, we're going to have our guest in for AM Talk, so please do stay on.